All right, all right.
Now we're
Here we
here.
are back again. Once again, nicely done with the bass work on that intro. I don't know how you do it every week.
I just stay out of focus. That's all.
It could just be me. Maybe I'm not. Okay, that's better.
Yeah. I need new glasses, and then I'll be in focus.
All right, here we are, Duluth Conservative. Just to lay her out for people that have never seen this before, this is a live stream or a podcast that's used to have topics that come up that affect Duluth, Minnesota, Minnesota in general, and then the nation with a conservative slant because that is sorely missing in this city of Duluth, Minnesota. I'm one of your hosts, Shawn. This is Dave, the co-host. Say hi, Dave.
I was going, hey, we're not that high up. Sorry.
Very nice.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we're just going to jump right into it um, and hit the Duluth local news. You're going to put the banner up.
Oh, yeah.
Dave's in charge of banners now. All right. So I compiled a list of stuff to talk about, and we'll go right into it. So the first thing is, did you see, Dave, that ICE agents showed up in Duluth and removed a bunch of roofers from the East End? Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I did. I did see that on the news.
So it's good to
Strangely.
see that they're far-reaching and going to even places like Minnesota, which was a couple votes short of being a sanctuary state just last year. So it's good to see that they're doing the job. And again, I will be happy to have a conversation with anybody who thinks that illegal immigration or illegal aliens in the United States is a good thing. And I'll give you plenty of reasons why I think it's a bad thing. One of the biggest things, and you can add on to this, Dave, is if we are allowing people to come in here illegally, that's just one of the symptoms of a bigger problem. And we have a fentanyl problem in the United States. We have drugs coming in from other countries, and we have sex trafficking. If illegal aliens are in this country, that means somehow they got in here and it's allowing other things to come in. And the illegal aliens that are coming in are not being vetted. They're not being uh, made sure that they're not terrorists or ill um, people with ill intentions. So I think, like I said, this is a symptom of a bigger problem, and we need to stop it. And the current administration, the Trump administration, is set against that, or set against illegal immigrants coming into this country, and then been doing a fantastic job of it. And I think the numbers, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the numbers from last February were in the thousands of people coming in, and I believe it was less than 1,000 encounters this last month. Did you read that, Dave?
Yeah. And then Trump mentioned that in his speech Tuesday night about the massive decrease in illegals trying to pass in over the month. And it's not hitting Duluth. It's just that's what they found. Strangely enough, down in I found an article down St. Louis Park. There's another roofer that they came and arrested 8 uh, who weren't supposed to be here, and they let one go for some reason. They don't really have time to discuss every little thing that they do, but it's good that probably the common theme you'll hear tonight is Trump said he's going to do it, and he's doing it.
Yeah. And I've heard from people that say, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do when you need your roof done? What do we rely on these people. My answer is I do the same thing I've done all the time. I find people that have employees that are local, that have long-term employees that are United States citizens, and I hire them to do the work if I need it hired out.
Right.
And anybody that's complaining against it, um, I just don't think they have a grasp on what it really does to a country. You lose your borders, you lose your country. Simple as that.
Right. And then, and that for me, that goes for any product. If I buy something, I want the business to be around next week to service it. If something
Right.
happens, or next year, if something's wrong with it, you know, I don't buy certain serviceable items at the box stores because they don't have a service department.
Right.
You know, they might be around, but they don't have anyone to service it. This is the same situation. this company, these roofers can be gone next month. They're
Right. Exactly.
and they're just gone. You know, you can't, litigation. They're gone.
Yeah. Yeah. If there's an accident, if they destroy your house, good luck finding them.
Right.
But I mean, my goal of hiring people from Duluth means that the money stays in Duluth. The people that are here, that live here, get the job. I mean, there's a whole reason I always have done that ever since I've been doing hiring out things for my houses way back when I first bought my first house. You find the people that are local, you're benefiting them, you're benefiting you, money stays local. This is the way you should operate. And if your
Right.
argument is, well, it'll be cheaper with an illegal alien doing it, well, it's not fair to them. They're not getting insurance. If they get hurt on the job, they get shipped back. Um, so it's a dangerous thing for them. It's dangerous for us. They do great work. I'm not saying they don't. And there is a argument to be made for legal migration, which is coming and going for that type of work. But
Yeah.
the businesses have to fund it, and they have to insure it, and they have to make sure that these people are being paid fairly. It's going to raise the prices, but it's the way it should be as opposed to skirting the system.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I think we hammered that one to death. Let's move on.
Yeah.
I had a nice little picture to show with that, but nah, it's all right. I have another section here, which is the bills introduced by the Duluth Representatives this week. And I just did the banner for you, Dave. So um, I took your job away from you already. Sorry. you can do the next one. I just added this one. So.
Yeah, I was thinking you just added that. I haven't seen that one before. So
this is live, man. This is just in time programming for this thing. So I'm going to go through a couple of these, and then Dave, pick up where I leave off. But I've got like 5 or 6 to talk about. The first one is HF 1981. This is primary author Alicia Kozlowski from the East End of Duluth, and Pete Johnson is from the West End. He's a co-author. And this is Zeitgeist Art funding provided and money appropriated. This is $1.1 million in fiscal year 2026 is appropriated from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund to the Commissioner of Administration for a grant to Zeitgeist Arts to facilitate community arts access by restoring and renovating the historic Zeitgeist Art building in downtown. So this is, again, us, the citizens, being money taken from us and given to a private business.
correct.
Even if it's got great intentions, this is a great thing, Representatives Kozlowski and Johnson, to set up a fund and get people around it and rally and have people donate to this as opposed to by gunpoint from your taxes.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that one. It's like, why are we giving that much money to a private organization?
Right.
We shouldn't be giving. We shouldn't give any taxpayer money to a private organization to help their private business. When my father was in business and when my brother was in business, we never got any money from the state to help them.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So why does certain businesses get attention and some don't? Just because they like what they're doing.
Right.
So, but yeah, just drop $1.1 million in their hands. They can. They're a business. They can.
It's
they can
not
handle
right.
it themselves.
Right. Whether you think it's a good cause or not, and I would say maybe this is, maybe it's not. I will tell you this from their website. I went and checked them out a little bit, and this sounds like such word salad, but from their website, we are committed to growing and sustaining a community that is inclusive, diverse, and equitable, artistic and vibrant, environmentally conscious, and a place where every individual can thrive. Working in partnership across our region, Zeitgeist connects like-minded organizations and people to collectively create programs and make lasting change. This sounds like another one of these um, groups that is, it's a Democrat. 2 Democrats are voting for this. They're trying to get this $1.1 million allocated to an organization that agrees with them.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. And I will tell you right now, if I agree with the organization and it's like this, I still don't want to fund it through state dollars.
No.
I will write a check for them myself and try to get my friends and family and get other people to do it, but not through tax money.
And this is going to be another repetitive story, because a story later on is the state is going to be short $6 billion.
Yeah.
So
Coincidentally, I have that ready to go.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I wanted to do a
things that
little.
we don't 100% need, like restoring a private business.
Exactly.
And this will, all these millions start adding up. So here's the first one to go.
Right. And here's that story you're just talking about. It used to be $5 billion, but now it's $6 billion. And here's the gentleman that I will say is really responsible for a lot of it is Tim Walz. And you can't discount the Minnesota legislature has been promoting these bills. The Republicans have been fighting it, but
right.
They raised the taxes on us last year. They spent the $18 billion surplus and then raised taxes another $10 billion. And look at this, $6 billion deficit. When does it stop? And when do we stop funding things like $1.1 million for an art house? If you can afford it, God bless you. Go ahead and go to it. But we can't.
Right. I mean, we're looking at, you look at the mines up the nickel mines. They don't want anything from us. The Lester Park rebuildings, they want to build shops down there. What do they want from the city? Nothing.
Right. They want potable water and some access to some sidewalks. That's it.
Right. They're not really asking for anything. So
right.
That's the way it should be done.
That's one of the plans. There's many other plans that want lots of stuff.
Yeah, but that's the only one that makes sense.
It's true. All right, let's go on to the next one. HF 1980, so the one right before 81. Center of American Indian and Minority Health funding provided. So this is $500,000 in 2026 and $500,000 in 2027, appropriated from the general fund to the Board of Regents of the University of Minnesota to support the Center of American Indian and Minority Health at the University of Minnesota Medical School, Duluth campus. Another money grab for some people, not everybody.
Right.
And not even a class of people, but a very specific class and ethnicity of person. Another $1 million over 2 years. When does this end? When do we stop funding things for particular people? If we're funding it for a health organization, it should be good enough to fund a health organization.
Right. Yeah, I've seen some of the bills that the health organizations around the city hand out. They've got plenty of money.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Did you say it was university money?
Well, this is going to the university to fund this organization. So the university gets their cut, and then they administer it.
They don't need it either. They're just looking for handouts, and then they'll just go and use it for whatever they feel like. They don't whatever goofy word salad they're using for this one.
Yeah, well, that was another one by Kozlowski and Johnson. So I know that they're trying to get money for Duluth, but this isn't the right kind of money to spend here in Duluth.
Right.
If you're going to allocate money to health and human services, make it for everybody, not just particular people. And I don't know why Pete Johnson's jumping on this train other than it's an easy bill for him to sign to say, I'm looking out for Duluth.
Right.
Here's another one, HF 1879. Author is Kozlowski. Johnson's not in this. Homeownership education, counseling, and training program funding provided and money appropriated. So this allocates $2 million from the general fund to the Housing Development Fund in 2026 and 27, with continued transfers of the same amount annually starting in 2028. The bill also appropriates $2 million from the Housing Development Fund to the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency for the program. 10% of these funds in 2026-2027 will go to the Minnesota Homeownership Center to ensure culturally appropriate services. $200,000. And it says, especially for individuals with limited English proficiency or limited access to technology. $2 million to do things that people should learn in high school, but are not taught in high school, because high school is for teaching people their pronouns and what gender they should be, as opposed to real life skills like doing your taxes, learning how to save for a home, what you do when you have a home.
Right.
And it's, again, a little buddy system here, but $200,000 to ensure culturally appropriate services. What does that mean? What culture? The American culture? Some other? I don't know. And it's intentionally vague.
Yeah, and I think this is her use of vague language to say she was trying to help a certain group. This is buying votes, basically.
Yeah.
So she can come in the next election and say, "Oh, look what I tried to do for you."
Well, there's a whole lot of that, because I don't think she chief authored anything that passed 2 years ago. So we'll see if she gets anything passed this time.
Yeah, I mean that's the fortunate part, is that none of her cockamamie ideas ever came to law.
Yeah. Even the Democrats are like, okay, slow down a little bit, would you please? And that's not easy to do.
Yeah, when they're offended.
You're right. That's like that story of John Belushi telling Carrie Fisher she needed to ease up on the cocaine. When you got John Belushi telling you to ease up on the cocaine, you might want to look at yourself really hard.
Right.
HF 1653, Pete Johnson from West Duluth co-authored this. Statewide electric bus charging stations funding provided, bond issued, and money appropriated. So there's $1 million. Proceeds fund to Commissioner of Commerce for grants to establish applicants as defined in Minnesota statutes to acquire and install level 2 and level 3 charging stations for electric buses used to transport students. Grants will be awarded to eligible applicants in accordance with the electric school bus deployment programs pursuant to Minnesota statute section 216C 374. Electric buses. We're funding it. We don't need to.
No.
Again, this is another great example of using our money to something that you think is appropriate, and it's not. This doesn't help us in general in Minnesota. If you have a great idea, fund it. Find people to fund it. This is what your leadership position is probably better suited for than being in the Minnesota House trying to figure out ways to spend our money. Again, $6 billion deficit coming up, and this is where we're spending it.
And the Duluth Transit Authority already proved that electric buses do not work in Minnesota, especially in winter.
Yeah. And we haven't had a tough winter with them yet.
Well, they can't make it up the hills in the winter because they lose electricity, and then they don't have enough heat to provide for the riders, so they have to put in external heaters into the buses.
Please tell me they're gas powered.
Yeah, I don't know, but so then
coal.
Coal. So you've created something that's going to take more energy to heat the bus, so it kills the energy even faster. So
yeah.
The money that if we really looked into what the DTA was doing in Duluth, you'd realize, well, that's another dead end, basically.
That actually brings up two segues off of this. First of all, I don't ride the bus, but I do see a lot of buses out because I'm downtown or up the hill. I never see more than 3 people in a bus. Do we have that kind of ridership that needs these big, long buses that we have? And number 2, did you ever notice that the license plates say they're registered in Wisconsin?
No, I didn't see that, but it's cheaper over there. So
yeah, the DTA, I believe the buses have Wisconsin plates. I believe that's where they're registered. Why is that?
Well, if you see $1 million car with Montana plates on it, they're not from Montana, but that's where all the rich people register their cheap vehicles or expensive vehicles because it saves them thousands of dollars a year. So
Wasn't that the case with Mark Dayton? Doesn't he have all his investments in like South Dakota
yeah,
when
yeah,
he was
definitely.
governor?
Yeah, when he was
I can't say
governor,
that's fact, but that's what I heard.
yeah, and so a lot of people were doing that, and to follow because if he can do it, then anybody can do it. You
Right,
know, it's a pretty easy example to live by is hide your money somewhere in some other state.
right.
And then if you look at it was hilarious because I seen a Star Tribune article about the richest people in Minnesota. Well, none of them lived in Minnesota.
Well, you can't be rich and live in Minnesota. You know that.
Yeah, because
They'll
the
suck all your money away.
governor wants his cut, and it's going to get worse. I'm sure.
My favorite thing is that Waltz doesn't even own a home in this state. You know,
Right.
so so he doesn't pay property tax. None of this bothers him at all. All right, I'm going to go on to HF 13. Duty to retreat before using reasonable force in defense of self or others would be eliminated. So right now we have this run and pray kind of policy in Minnesota. It isn't stand your ground. It's you have to try everything you can to get away before you try to defend yourself. So turn your back and run away and hope to God the guy can't catch you or has a gun or a knife to throw. Don't try to defend yourself.
Right.
So the bill was written. Um, the elimination of duty to retreat. It eliminates the requirement for a person to retreat before using reasonable force to defend themselves or others. And reasonable force of circumstances. The statute already allows the use of reasonable force for various situations, including police officers, private citizens using reasonable force in defending themselves or others. The bill specifically adds that reasonable force may be used in situations involved in the defense of self or others without duty to retreat. Every single Democrat voted against this, so it didn't pass. That's your representative, Alicia Kozlowski and Pete Johnson. Don't think you should be able to defend yourself if you're being attacked and reasonably think you're going to be caused harm. And if you do, you will be prosecuted to the extent of the law. That's just insane to me.
And that includes in your house.
Yeah,
So if you're in your house and they're ready to attack you with a bat and you have a gun, but you have a way to back out of the situation,
run away.
you run away and you don't, then you go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want you standing your ground. They don't want you to defend yourself.
Yeah, what is the point of that either? I mean, why don't they want people to be able to defend themselves? You can't rely on the police in a situation where it's happening right then. Police come in and can clean things up. If
Right.
they happen to be right there, maybe they can help. But typically they're not right there. And I'm not taking a bullet in the back. Um, now,
No.
thank God I've never been in a situation like that where I have to worry about it. But if I do, it doesn't seem reasonable to me to go, I would try to, protect myself, but it's against the law, so I can't do it.
Right.
I guess you could just kill me.
Yeah. The whole thing does not make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
So Duluth News Tribune endorsed candidates and Representatives Alicia Kozlowski and Pete Johnson both voted against this bill that'll allow you to protect yourself. Nicely done. I'm glad you're protecting the citizens of this state.
right.
All right. I don't have anything else for Duluth or the bills. Do you have anything else for this bit, Dave?
Yeah, I sent it to you late, but I did have a thing from that's coming up for the Duluth City Council meeting, and they were going to hire a company, Ehlers and Company, out of I think it was out of Colorado, but irrelevant. But they added $75,000 to the outcropping of money to these people. And what this company does is provide finance advice. So they're going to give them $300,000 to give them advice how to spend money and how to handle their finances.
Isn't that their job? Isn't that why we elect them?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly reading the thing. That's exactly the same I got out of it. Is for $300,000, that's a lot of money to be spending on, so they don't have to do their job.
Or to be
Because
told what to do, how to do their job because they don't know how? Is that what it is?
yeah, I mean that's part of the requirement for. Then why did you even try to be elected if
Right.
you're that's part of the job is spending money and the finance side of it, and you don't know how to do it? You're dropping 300,000, or you're gonna you know how to vote on spending $300,000
Right.
of other people's money to tell you
Right.
how to do your job?
And did you say this was out of state too? This company is out from out of state?
Yeah, I was I'm not exactly sure where they're, but they've had done. I thought it was in Colorado. I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but they've done other cities and like Minnetonka Island. They've done small cities.
Okay.
So worked in Minnesota before, but I thought they were mostly in Colorado and Washington State.
We don't have this kind of expertise in Duluth that we could spend the money here locally.
We don't, and that's their job.
Right. That's
If you,
fantastic. Is that
yeah, if you,
coming up in the next one on the 10th? I think that's Monday or Tuesday, right?
correct. Yep.
Okay. Well,
Like that was part of the job description that you wanted to sign up for.
that's hard though. That's hard work.
Are they going to quit by then? I don't really know.
Yeah. All right. Anything else for Duluth?
I don't think so. I think
All
that
right.
was the one that really caught my eye. Was
All right. Well, we're ready to slash over to Minnesota then. And this is kind of we'll go over a couple Minnesota things first and I'll come back to this. Minnesota school cancels career event after anti-white discrimination complaint. So the company who was putting on the event said the website it specifically seeks to aid people of Indigenous, Black, Brown, AAPI, and Hispanic Latinx backgrounds. I don't know what AAPI is, and I don't know what Latinx is, but so somebody sued and said this is discrimination against white people. So in response, instead of just opening it up to everybody and just rename it, they just canceled it. That's a
yeah.
solid plan, man. I mean, if we can't just do our groups that we want, we're not doing it at all.
Well, I'm sure they wanted to bury it under the table somehow. So if nobody actually seen it by canceling it, that
Right. So let me read this from the article. St. Paul Public School spokesperson Erica Wacker responded to the incident by arguing the district is careful about its anti-discrimination policy. One example she cited to the Star Tribune is the National African American Parent Involvement Day is, quote, designed for a specific group of people, but it's open to anyone, end quote. She contested that when mistakes are made, however, they typically are due to an external partner. Well, that's just fantastic. So again, I go back to this conversation I had with the Duluth Chamber of Commerce, where they had an event that was for BIPOC, African American BIPOC veterans. And so BIPOC was and LGBTQ. So it was basically anybody who's not white, because that's BIPOC, Black people, Indigenous, I can't, of
people of
color, something
color.
like that. People of color. So that's anybody non-white, gay people, because that's the LGBTQ, and veterans. So if you start eliminating all the people, if you take the whole world as a whole and you start carving out, what's left? Straight white men who are not in the military. That was it, which I actually fall into that category. So I responded and I said, why are you sending me this this kind of information? It's clearly discriminatory. And I got an answer back saying, well, we include these people, these people, these people. So we think it's very inclusive. Which I said, sure, it seems inclusive when you're not one of the people being excluded. But
Right.
when you are, it kind of shows just how exclusive it is. Just because you're discriminating against one small group of people doesn't mean it's inclusive. It means it's exclusive there. So that was great. So they just canceled this career event instead of um, just holding it and just letting everybody having a career event. Well, how hard is that? Why
Right.
can't you just have a career event? Um, let's see. I'll go into this other one here. The Senate has a bill to ban guns, and it was introduced by our favorite Senator Jen McEwen. And I have a simplified version of the bill, which I will actually share so I don't have to keep just saying everything. Just 1 second. Let me know what you can say. Okay. So, prohibition of transfer of assault weapons. And so what is the definition of what's an assault weapon, Dave?
Yeah.
Well, it's firearms like AK-47 and AR-15, because I swear to God, people think AR means assault rifle,
Yeah, they
and
do.
defines other guns as assault weapons if they have certain features like a folding stock or a large magazine, which or a pistol grip. Do all pistols fall into that category? They all have a pistol grip if they're a pistol, do they not?
But even some rifles have pistol grips.
Well, I mean, that's specifically what they're trying to go after. But
Right.
they're going to have a buyback program. So more money from us to buy back. So you know who is legal to have the guns? The government. And
Right.
that is all. You can't will them to your kids. You can't sell them. You can't transfer them out of state. And uh, Jen McEwen it's complete anti-gun bill. It's against the Second Amendment. How does she think that this can hold up in court?
Well, I mean, when you have seven Democrats in the Minnesota Supreme Court, it's going to hold up pretty easily
Yeah, I don't think it's going to hold up in the actual
in the
federal
real world.
Supreme Court. But
Yeah.
they just keep doing this. They keep adding these things in. These same kind of bills went in California. They get kicked out, and they just keep doing it over and over and over again. There has to be a moratorium on these kind of bills where they're trying to take control of all your guns, all your weapons, and for individual citizens. Because I don't know if you've noticed this, but if you look at Australia and England, where they have banned weapons, look what's happening to those people right now. People are being arrested if they pray in their houses. People are being arrested and they're being knifed to death on the street, and you can't defend yourself. In fact, if
Right.
you try to defend yourself, much like the Minnesota law, you get put in prison.
Like Australia, I haven't looked at England's crime rates lately, but Australia has a higher crime rate than America does,
Yeah,
and that's
and they,
but that's and they're because you have no way to defend yourself. The bad guys just come up with machetes or knives,
yeah,
and they can see who has got a knife and who doesn't have knives because they know they don't have guns.
yes, absolutely. And they used to call this pistol the great equalizer. That was because when a grandmother had it, she was equal in strength to a guy who was 25 years old and 250 pounds of all muscle.
Right.
The great equalizer meant that he can't mess with her, she wouldn't mess with him, and everybody would be happy. And that's the beauty of having the Second Amendment.
But that's I heard a Democrat say something. The number one job of this state was, so he was completely off. The number one job of the state is actually security, is keeping things safe and keeping things equal. So no companies run over you. So no one no there's no bullies anywhere. By that's the state's job. By using this law, they're taking away they're taking away our ability to stay safe.
Right.
And they're not going to be around to keep us safe. Therefore, it's completely illegitimate.
It reminds me of the Minneapolis City Council when they wanted to defund the police and then they had private security. They want
Right.
it both ways. They want to be able to be safe. They have the money. I mean, these politicians, a lot of them, I'm not saying the Minnesota House people have a lot of money, but at the federal level, hey, I mean, Nancy Pelosi, she got plenty of cash.
Right.
AOC, I think she was in debt when she joined Congress. Now she's a multimillionaire. These guys can afford their security, so they don't care what happens to us. But here in the Minnesota, um, just keep your hands off our guns. Keep your hands off our weapons. We're not going out and killing people. We use them for defense. Best case scenario, never have to fire it. Worst case
Yeah.
scenario, I do have to fire it, but I was able to save myself or somebody else. And the people that say that, well, you don't need a AR-15 to go hunting, honey. That Second Amendment isn't made to protect your right to hunt. It's to
Right.
protect us from the government. A government that's fairly scared of its members is one that kind of keeps on its toes and actually looks out for it. And when you look at Australia and you look at England, that's what happens when a government has no fear of its citizens. Clearly.
Right.
I'm going to yell at a cloud pretty soon. I want to end the Minnesota section by talking about Canada. How you like that? The 51st state.
Pretty soon, yeah.
That sets people off. Canadian Premier of Ontario said he's going to cut off power to New York, Michigan, and Minnesota because of the tariffs that Trump is going to impose. So his response to increased prices are to what he thinks is going to be cutting off entirely power to a bunch of people. I mean, just putting them in the dark. And that seems like to him an appropriate response to higher prices and the tariffs. All because one of the major things that the tariffs are being put in place for is the trade imbalance, but it's also to stop the fentanyl flow from going from across state lines from Canada. Everybody talks about the southern border being porous. The northern border is worse in certain areas, and especially right now because they're taking care of the southern border.
Right.
But we got a lot of people coming in from the northern border, and that needs to stop. But I wanted to talk about. I had this other video clip I wanted to show. So let me just present this right here. Here we go.
Indicating that yet again, the president is sowing uncertainty and chaos, attempting to undermine our economy by implementing tariffs and then quickly pulling them off. He has realized what we told him from the beginning, which is that these tariffs hurt Americans. They hurt American companies. They hurt American workers.
Okay, I want to stop there for a second. His argument here is that tariffs that the Americans have put in place are hurting Americans. And in response, we're going to put tariffs back on you. So apparently the message is because you're hurting the American citizens, we're going to hurt the Canadian citizens too, because that's what it would be doing, right?
Yeah.
Or does it only hurt the Americans when you do the tariffs? Like when we put tariffs on them, they put tariffs on us. It only hurts us. Is that what I'm understanding from this guy?
Well, they already have tariffs on a ton of stuff.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we have a trade balance, right?
Yeah. So, some was up to 220% tariffs on certain foods.
Wow.
And I should have brought that to prove my point, but yeah, they're already doing it. So he's just basically he's retaliating back. So
right. I also want to say his shoulder pads are doing some heavy lifting for this guy. He's not the biggest boy in the world to be talking tough. I'll tell you that.
no.
So let's go on with what else he has to say.
They hurt American families. And what's also hurting is the uncertainty that the continued threat and removal of tariffs has on our country here in Canada. My message for the Prime Minister, for my colleagues across the country, and it's one I'm sure they want to deliver to me too, is stand strong. We are not going to accept these continual threats, this continued uncertainty. We're going to stand up for Canadians.
So he's not going to stand for it. He doesn't say how. But this next section is a little my favorite.
This is unacceptable. And we're going to ensure that the Americans understand how pissed off we are, how unified we are, how committed we are to working as a country to stand up for each other and our own independence on our own 2 feet. And I say we don't let up until the president takes the threat off the table.
That was a speech that said nothing. It was a small little man that was very angry about something. And did it intimidate you? Did it make you feel like there's something that's going to happen here, Dave?
Well, obviously he thinks something's going to happen, but
But what? Based on that, what's it going to happen?
I don't know, because maybe he's going to retaliate with higher tariffs on the United States, but even that doesn't make sense because he said that it would hurt Canadians.
Right.
He doesn't seem to care.
I just don't know. I view that as like a little guy yelling at a wall, and nobody's there to hear it.
Right.
The premier minister of British Columbia, it just doesn't pull a lot of weight. I'm sure he's doing it for political purposes, and I'm sure he thinks it sounded really good, but he just doesn't have the gravitas to pull it off.
On a side note to that, I was looking at his background, and if they're in Canada and it's February, March, where's the snow?
Global warming, 9/11,
and there's no
January 6th. I'm sorry.
There's no one's wearing jackets. Where are they?
Yeah. Yeah, he's in Pittsburgh or something.
Yeah, is he in Florida? Hanging out with DeSantis, and they just propped or is it the fake background I have?
That's right. He's in an office. I did notice that he said we're going to put Canada first, which you know what, I respect that. I understand that. But when we say it here in the United States, it's bad. Every other country that's put their country first, and it's good. But when we put it first, apparently we're bad. I don't understand that dynamic either.
Yeah, and you see a lot of that. I seen a picture of Amy Klobuchar, and with her little Ukraine get up on, and Ukraine first, not America first.
Right.
And for what I seen, that was the only time they ever applauded at the
yes.
Trump speech. Is
yes. When they can continue the war.
Right? Yes. Let's continue the war. Screw the kid with brain cancer. Let him die. We don't care.
Hold off. We're not on the nation yet. We'll get to it. We're going to talk about that. You saw the picture I had going on with the stream, didn't you? All right. Let's finish up Minnesota here. I'll just share something else here. So they had a vote, and comes up here. Democrats vote against bill requiring legislative approval for extending emergency declarations. Minnesotans endured 16 months of unchecked emergency orders that devastated families, closed businesses, and robbed students of a once-in-a-lifetime experience like graduation and sports seasons. And it's true. And guess what happened? Democrats voted against it. Apparently they like this. And unfortunately, what I'm going to say is prolific and has come true before. This will come back to bite them at some point. You'll have a Republican governor. He's going to declare emergency, and they're going to wish they hadn't done this. Right. I don't understand why they want to give their power away like this to whoever's the governor. Right now, they think it's a good idea because there's a Democratic governor, so they think that's fine. If I was in that house, if there was a Republican governor, I'd still vote for it. I'd like to have limited power in government, and the government shouldn't be able to just declare an emergency. Look what happened. COVID-19 was a mess. I made a statement right at the beginning of COVID-19 that I said to somebody, if they would just ignore it or, treat the people not by putting sick people in nursing homes, but just treat people like an influenza, we wouldn't even hear about this in about 3 weeks.
Right.
And I still stand by that. I still believe I was right.
Yeah,
Some
Sweden
very,
didn't, and they came out of it just fine.
the Amish came out of it just fine too.
Right.
That was something to live through, and that was crazy. I couldn't believe people the way they acted, what they did, putting a self-made mask on and then saying that they were safe. You know, walking by somebody who was smoking a cigarette with the mask down, smoking a cigarette, and you could smell the smoke, but you couldn't
Right.
get through to people that if the smoke can get through, any kind of viral can get through. And then when they put on the boxes of those masks, not the H1 whatever they are, but the regular masks everybody was wearing, this
Yeah, the
does not stop.
N95s. Yeah.
Yeah, if it wasn't N95, this does not stop transmission of viruses. Didn't matter. You couldn't tell people.
And the N95s didn't work either because I know a lot of sheetrockers, and at the end of the day, you look at they pull their mask off, and their face would be covered with the white sheetrock dust.
Oh, sure.
So it wasn't even stopping the white sheetrock dust. How is it going to stop COVID?
Right.
It wasn't going to.
Great. Yeah, spoiler, it didn't.
It didn't.
All right. All right. One more thing for Minnesota. You ever been to Devani's? Do you remember eating there?
When I was doing construction, we ate there once.
Good, thick carb filling pizza. They kicked out a group of Republicans because they showed up and they had probably MAGA hats on or something. They were at an event, and after the event, they went to Devani's to eat. That was it. They weren't holding a session. They weren't trying to recruit people. They weren't having a political event at the Devani's, and they kicked them out saying, "We don't have political things here." I would like to believe that it was only solely because the person really believed that they were doing the right thing because they didn't want to have politics there. But what I think is they were targeting these guys. They don't like their politics and they wanted to kick them out. And I also noticed that, God, this only seems to go one way. I never hear about Democrats getting kicked out of places and the
Right.
places going, "Oh, I'm sorry, that was a misunderstanding." It just so happens so many times to conservatives and never happens the other way around.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It just doesn't. I've never heard of it. It just it's becoming like this one. It's almost becoming commonplace.
Right.
Oh, it's
It's
okay.
like,
We're just kicking out Republicans.
do it and beg forgiveness instead of doing the right thing to begin with.
Yeah, and so now that it's hit the news, they just lost half their business basically.
Yeah. Well, I hope
You know,
they don't hold this against all the Devanis just because of this one thing, but at the same time, I hope the person that did this has gotten at least educated, and hopefully that Devani's went up and said, "Hey, you know what? We did this wrong. Here's some, free pizzas. We'll have your thing at our place next time. Make it right. That's all.
right?
Mistakes can be made, but at the same time, you can't keep making them." And I have a hard time believing this is an outright mistake.
Yeah, I do too. It's too common, especially in a blue state.
Yeah, happens here quite a bit. All right. I said it was last one, but I relied to myself. DFL bill would mandate insurance coverage to over-the-counter contraceptives in Minnesota. So prescription and over-the-counter contraceptives would be covered by insurance if the bill introduced by the DFL lawmakers pass. Why? Why are we paying for this? This is not something that's in the best interest of the state. I mean, these are the same people that, again, argue that we need to have a bunch of immigrants flood the nation because we just don't have the birth rate. Why are they even pushing this to begin with? But it's not our job as citizens to pay for people's contraceptives. And I've heard people, their argument, if you say something like that as well, we shouldn't be paying for Viagra either. Totally agree. You're
Correct.
absolutely right. It's
Yeah.
not our responsibility to pay for stuff like that.
Like I was saying earlier, that this isn't the typical DFL Democrat racist idea, where they just like Planned Parenthood was originally. It was put in poor black neighborhoods. Well, this is to keep the black population down or to keep
Yeah.
the poor population down.
I certainly hope
However you
that's
want to
not
look
the
at it,
case.
and
Good Lord.
that's a typical Democrat thing. Is we'll go behind the scenes and do our dirty deeds, and then we'll come out and say, "Oh, look what great people we are."
Yeah, that's horrible if that's the case. I mean, geez.
Yeah, I mean that's my opinion, but I don't know. If you look at where all the Planned Parenthoods are, they're in poor neighborhoods, mostly minority. Why? Because the original lady, Mary Stanger, who set it up, she was a racist and an atypical racist Democrat.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
Yeah. But you're right. Back to the point. I mean, this is a social issue that we shouldn't be paying for.
No, it's not our job.
No.
Not and again, if you think it's a great idea, start up a fund.
Yeah.
Start a charity.
Just like Tampon. That's why they call him Tampon Tim.
Yeah. I'm talking to some ladies that we went to school with, and they were just ticked about that. She's like, we went to school, we had to take care of it, and it's not that hard. Really, it isn't. All right, this is the last thing for Minnesota. We'll move on. And I haven't vetted this. I can't tell you this is true or not, but I thought this was kind of funny. Somali warlord, and I'm not even going to try to butcher his name, a major donor to Ilian Omar, just got nabbed by the FBI in Minneapolis, caught with a stash of AK-47s. Those are assault rifles, aren't they?
Yeah.
He's locked up with no bail. Time to arrest and deport Ilian too? What do you think? So that's going on with what she thinks. But Ilian might have some problems coming up in the next race for funds. I would hope to think that even if I run for office, that a Somali warlord isn't the one that's backing me. But that's me. Yeah.
But how do you vet the people that are giving you money?
Well, it depends. If it's a major backer, then I'm assuming holding fundraisers and doing stuff like that. But you're right. You can't control who contributes to, and you can't tie the people that are being contributed to the contributors. Doesn't matter.
Right.
You're absolutely right. If it's a large donation, like some of the Congress people get, and it's from an organization, you should be very careful about how you take your money.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
make sure it backs up what you're saying. So I don't blame her for this. I just think it was very funny to see that a Somali warlord is one of your major backers. Well,
it's starting to make sense, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of goes to something we're going to talk about in a little bit, but it comes down to, she's an immigrant into this country and she's a U.S. senator. What? How do you get to be in that position of authority and not even have been born here? That's just ridiculous to me. And that and dual citizens shouldn't be holding any public offices at all. Is my
absolutely.
opinion. And that's the same for another country. If I move to Canada, I don't think I should be able to run for office. My kids, if they were born there, sure, but not me. You go to another country, you're going there as a guest until that's it. You should feel like you're a guest the whole time you live there.
Right.
Okay. That's it for Minnesota. You got anything else, Dave, for Minnesota?
I was looking. I was going through my notes here, and I think that covers Minnesota.
Cool. Let's talk national. Nice. You're right on top of it. I like this. Let's talk about the recap of the Trump-Zelensky meeting. A lot of people watched that, and I happened to be watching it at the time. and it got done, and it was it was a blowout. It was like for the first little section of it, there was talk, but I think my opinion is Zelensky wanted the cameras and the press there, and he had agreed to a deal. Rubio was there, and he was just coming to sign it, and he wanted to ad hoc, real time renegotiate parts of the deal to push Trump into a corner so that he would guarantee security. And what guaranteed security for Zelensky is get the Ukraine into the UN, which is a red line for Russia. And it reminds me a lot of the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was the red line for the United States. They were not going to allow nuclear weapons in Cuba. And I believe John F. Kennedy said he would set the world on fire to stop it. And I don't see that as much different for Russia than seeing Ukraine in the UN, and then what, if they do anything, if Russia responds, like Ukraine was shelling their own country for years on the East Coast, Russia responds, all of NATO goes against them. And that's a trigger for them. They don't want that kind of response. It's a relic of the Cold War from when it was the USSR, and that collapsed back in the 90s. And I understand Russia's point, and just to say that, people will get very upset, and they will say Russia's the enemy. You can't say that. Well, I don't think Russia is an enemy. I think we're hostile to them. I think they're another nation that wants to control a lot of stuff, and we're not, really unified with them like we are other countries. But I don't think of them as the enemy. I don't think China is the enemy either, because enemy implies war to me. You don't have enemies unless you're in a war.
Right.
So I understood the point of view, and I think Zelensky has got to stop talking about getting Ukraine into the UN. I think that's just a non-starter. And I think Donald Trump's whole mission is to get them to the table so they'll actually come to a ceasefire, because he'd like to stop the fighting, which is, you want to stop the fighting. There's people dying. It's a meat grinder. They send young people in, they come out dead.
Right.
And I think it's a noble thing to want to do. You can't just Neville Chamberlain. You can't just say yes to everything, but you got to be able to come in and negotiate. A good peace deal, if it's done right, is both sides are somewhat happy and somewhat unhappy. They got some of the stuff they wanted, and they didn't get everything. That's what a negotiation is. But you have to be able to say, yes, we will stop fighting if these conditions are met. I think Zelensky went in there after he had talked to many Democrats after he came to the country, right before the meeting, one of them being Amy Klobuchar. And I think they snuck into his ear, you don't want this to end. We'll wait this out. We're backing you all the way. You just have to make it. So try to get these things. He'll never stop funding you. He'll never pull out. Right. I have a feeling that that's what happened. And he was given this advice before he went to that meeting. And I think Trump and Vance were pretty tolerant of what he was saying. Tolerant being that they could have responded a lot sooner than they did.
Right.
And said, shut up. But they didn't until he crossed the line. And that's when Vance started going after him. It's like, dude, you're pretty ungrateful here. Right? You haven't said thank you. And he's talking about thanking the American people for all the support they did, because he made it sound like they were on their own, like they were just doing this themselves and they haven't had no help. And then when he said that, when we went in here and we've been alone when we first started, that's when Trump I think his blood started to boil a little bit.
Right.
And then when Zelensky said something like, well, you have this great ocean and beaches, but you won't have it very long, and then you'll see. He was basically saying, the war's coming to you. And that ticked Trump off too. And they did the right thing, I think. Kick him out. Now, so the meeting ended. They were going to have a lunch. They said, go off and think about it for a while. And I saw the reporters talking about it afterwards, and they were like, oh, I don't know how we come back from this. I don't know where we go after this. I mean, I don't think there's any coming back for these two. And it's clear that these guys have never had a discussion or a negotiation with anybody at a CEO level, because that's the kind of stuff that happens all the time.
Right.
And what happens is, I could see if Zelensky went away and he came back and he says, okay, let's talk. I've cooled down. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that had to happen. I do appreciate all the stuff you guys are doing. I understand what you're doing. Let's have a talk. They could have had a meeting that afternoon. This thing could have got signed. It could have been done, but it didn't happen. He went back home. But the commentators and other politicians couldn't see a path to that happening, and that's ridiculous. Nothing was said in that meeting that couldn't have been undone that day.
Right.
And that's the problem with a lot of the politicians. That's the problem with the commentators. I understand. They just have journalistic jobs. They've never had to actually deal with something like this. But the politicians certainly don't know what they're doing. And then Lady Lindsey Graham came out and then supported Trump, which really shocked me until I realized I think Lindsey just wants this war to continue. And he was very happy that this happened.
Right.
So that's my take on that whole meeting. I don't think it was as disastrous as people think it is. I think politics is messy, and it's not a bad thing to have the dust up. It usually isn't done in front of the press like this, but why not? Why don't we get to see stuff like this? This is good for America. This is good for Ukraine. It's good for the world to see what things are happening and what people are saying. And I think Trump is very sincere about wanting to have a ceasefire, and I think he knows how to negotiate a lot better than Zelensky does. But he has to have Zelensky's on his side to then be able to go to Russia and then negotiate that as well. And Putin won't get everything he wants either if we do this right.
Correct.
That's my rant on this. Go ahead. What do you got, Dave?
I thought I still had the video up. I sent it to you earlier, but Zelensky pulled the same garbage with Biden in 22, and he got away with it. Biden was angry, but he didn't really do anything about it. He didn't give him an ultimatum that you're not going to, then we won't send you anything. Mm-hmm. So I think he was trying to play the same cards with an actual president. Mm-hmm. So he pulls the same garbage in front of the cameras, in front of Trump, trying to embarrass him, trying to corner him.
Right.
And Trump wasn't going to have it. And Trump's, basically said, you're going to lose. We have other cards. You're going to lose.
Yeah.
And that's it. So
I thought that was really insightful when he said that too. I thought it was really candid too. And he's basically saying, big shot, you're coming in here acting like you're all tough and everything, but you really have nothing. And he's right. He's absolutely right.
Yeah. Because if it wasn't for the U.S., the war would have been over already.
Oh, it wouldn't have started,
Yeah. They would have walked right in like, the U.S. taking over Canada,
Well, yeah, over 10 minutes, maybe under.
Something to do with it over lunchtime, basically.
Oh, that's not fair. Canada's got a real Air Force.
So, he was pulling the same game plan that, he was trying to do with the Democrats, and he lost. Right. And he's already conceded himself and wrote a letter to Trump that Trump had talked about that on Tuesday night during his speech.
Right.
That he's ready for peace because his little games didn't work.
Right.
So
we're going to go into this a little more after we talk about some other things, but I want to talk about Europe's response to this as well.
Yeah, I might as well get into that too, because that's pretty much all I've noticed is it's the same game plan that he's been trying to pull, and it doesn't work with a real president.
No, this is the difference between having somebody who's actually in charge and understands what's going on, and what we've had the last 4 years, and to be honest, the last 16 years, or well, aside from Trump's presidency, the 16 years before that.
Right.
Let me I want to go into another thing about the about Trump's address to Congress, and then we'll come back to this a little bit. And I'm going to put up here what Pete Stauber had to say about it, and then I'll just read it, because I think Pete really did a good job of writing up a summary, and I think he got all the sentient points down. So he said, one thing is clear, the renewal of the American dream is underway. And President Trump has accomplished more in 1 month in office than most presidents accomplish in 4, or I would say 8 years. And talking about the celebration of securing the border, stopping the flow of fentanyl, which is tied to securing the border, saving women's sports from guys that are dominating. And I'm going to show a video of that in a little bit. Cutting government waste. I don't understand the people that are against cutting government waste. That is just astounding to me. And restoring world peace. And you can read the rest here, but it's basically a really nice statement by Pete Stauber talking about the joint address. And I watched that thing live as it was happening, and I thought it was a very well put together speech by somebody who understands everything he's talking about, understands all the issues. He's calling out people a little bit, but he was pretty mild, really.
Yeah.
But he said something I thought that was really interesting and insightful, and we've talked about it before. There's nothing he could do that would make these people happy, make them smile, applaud or anything. And when they awarded that young man Secret Service pass or, the credentials, could you just applaud that? You don't have to stand up. You don't have to make a big show of it, but can you just do something for his family? You got people there whose family has been killed. You can't even applaud them or show any sign of support. It's crazy.
Yeah, the Democrats lost a lot of humanitarian points Tuesday night. So
there was one guy that stood up and was protesting, and a lot of people were saying, "Well, that's horrible." And from my point of view, it's okay. I mean, this is, it doesn't. Sometimes politics is messy. Sometimes you got to talk. But he needed to sit down when he was asked to sit down.
Correct.
There was a time and a place to do it, and it's time to cool down. So he deserved to be removed as well. But I don't see that as being a major embarrassment, other than he took it too far and didn't really have anything to say.
But then he did it again today or yesterday. They were going to censor him, and him and probably 20, 30 others got up into the well area and started singing. So they had to shut down the meeting again.
Why did that stop it? I saw that, but I don't understand why it just stopped it.
I think they were just annoyed. I couldn't figure it out either.
I mean, he's got a mic. Just vote on it, and who cares?
Well, right, but wasn't that the whole point of January 6th was
insurrection? Oh yeah.
They were stopping a government procedure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shouldn't they have arrested all those people standing up there and thrown them in jail for 3 or 4 years?
With no charges? Yeah, I think so.
I mean, it was the same thing. They were delaying a government procedure.
Process. Yeah, exactly.
So, he didn't do it once. He's done it twice. Now he needs to just be thrown out.
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. I didn't think it was so bad that night, but the continuation of this is silly now. It's not counterproductive, and it's the same. They're trying to bang on a drum until they can find something that they can get outraged about, so that they can get their people, motivated. I did read I read a link here I have, and it was an article written up, and it said. Trump blasted Zelensky as a dictator without elections and falsely stated that Ukraine was to blame for the war. I thought that was an interesting thing. So first of all, the wording falsely stated. You don't have to add that if you're a reporter. Here's some advice. Take away the word falsely. Let people understand whether or not it's true or false. They just stated it. Secondly, he calls him a dictator. Well, when somebody cancels elections, makes the opposing party illegal and sends a lot of their members to the front lines, starting to smell a lot dictatorship-y to me.
Right. Yeah, he's the only political party there now, so.
Yeah, we had elections in World War II, right?
Right.
That was a pretty big war. We were going through a lot of stuff right then. We still held the elections here in this United States. Why can't they have them in Ukraine? This guy seems to fly everywhere else. I mean, he was here, he's there, he's back in America a couple times. He seems to come and go as he pleases. Doesn't seem like it's that bad.
Right.
I saw a video of a rave happening in Kiev. 20-year-old kids dancing. Didn't seem to be a problem.
Yeah.
So,
all the beaches were full of people, and
yeah. I do want to play this one clip of Zelensky and talking about what he expects from Americans. And let's see if I can find it. Okay. Here we go.
Have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war. And they will have to fight because it's nature that we're talking about, and they will be dying. The U.S.
Lovely, isn't it? And I don't think this is very current. I think this is a while ago he said this, but he just assumes that we're going to send our sons and daughters and grandkids out to Ukraine to die.
yeah.
Because of a war to keep him in power. And that's all I can see it's for anymore.
Yeah, since he got rid of the other political parties, that he's the only one left.
Right.
So he's
And
just
then,
protecting his own job.
Right. And then I want to talk about Europe's response to this. And we will do this here. I'm not actually going to play it. I'm just going to show it. But you've got France, Macron addressing this, and it's kind of long. It's 13 minutes. I'm not going to play it. And then Germany. And they're basically saying, we're going to war. This is going to happen. Get ready for it. We are in a wartime capacity here. We need to start mobilizing for it. I don't understand why they're so bloodthirsty to go to war over this. I understand when they're talking about borders. I understand what they think of when it comes to Russia. Unless they stop this negotiation with Trump, Russia's not going to be occupying the whole of Ukraine. It's not going to be the fact that they're going to take it over and now they're going to be the next border over and they're going to keep running. But they seem to be very hot to go to war for some reason I can't understand. And I would love it if somebody could explain that to me.
Well, my view, I don't know if it's accurate, but it brings us back to Governor Walz, is we need to mobilize. We need to declare an emergency. If we declare an emergency, then we can change our powers.
Right.
And I can see them, hey, this one chicken's got the bird flu. We better call an emergency week so we can take over the whole egg industry.
Yeah, and kill 1 million egg-laying chickens.
And I mean, Macron and the German chancellor, they're all, hardcore lefties.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, they see a way to increase their power. They're going to do it.
Right.
And that's obviously I have nothing to back it up because I don't know them, but it certainly seems pretty similar to what happened in Minnesota for COVID.
Yeah.
Oh, it's only going to be 2 weeks. We're not going to tell you when the 2 weeks start.
That was the problem, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Starting now.
Next year.
Starting
next year, later. It's going to, the 2 weeks is going to start.
Right.
So I see the whole thing as just a political grab over there to, because they don't like Trump either.
Do they not understand? Every person that dies, it's unnecessary in that war. This should be a ceasefire right now. You want a guarantee? Sign the mineral deal. Get U.S. companies out there invested in the mineral products. Russia attacks them. You got the United States to deal with then. They're not going to attack them then.
No.
That was the plan. And it was signed It was ready for signature 3 times and got backed out 3 times. Now we're on number 4. I don't know if you saw Rubio, by the way, in that meeting. He's sitting there like, he was so mad that happened because he'd
Yeah.
done all the work. And he even said, I saw him talking afterwards. He goes, look, he could have signed it where he was. He wanted to come to the United States and sign it. Yeah, he wanted to come to the United States and change the deal.
Yeah.
No,
Well, I don't know. Is there a burger chef or a Whataburger out in Washington D.C. you wanted to go run into, or
really jonesing for a burger, man.
you never know. They don't have any In-N-Out burgers out in
That's true.
in
Out in Kiev.
Ukraine, so
All I
maybe
got
he's
is
looking
chicken
for something.
Kiev. I hate it.
Yeah, Waffle House.
So right before President Trump's address to the Congress, the Democrats did something very interesting. Chuck Schumer put out a video. He's talking about how egg prices aren't down. Trump's been in office for 6 weeks. God's sake, why isn't everything better? So, but Elizabeth Warren put out the same video. So if you watch this.
When I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
That ain't true. That's what you just heard. Since day one of Donald Trump's presidency, prices are not down. They're up. Inflation is getting worse, not better. The prices of groceries, gas, housing, eggs, of essentials. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has done nothing. Goose eggs to lower prices for you. Instead, he's pardoned violent criminals who savagely beat police officers on January 6th. That's an effing disgrace. He's letting Elon Musk take a chainsaw to vital government programs, and then, even worse, giving him access to Americans' most sensitive data, Social Security numbers, tax returns, healthcare bills. He's fired thousands of essential workers, people who help our veterans get their benefits, people fighting Ebola in Africa so it doesn't come here. He's frozen funding for vital programs that so many American families need. Cancer research, education funds, payments to family farmers, and so much worse. Why are they doing this? Trump, Musk, Doge are taking these vital services away from you for one reason only, so they can give tax breaks to their billionaires club. Their plan is awful, simply awful. Billionaires win, families lose.
Well,
And
billionaires
that
win,
is the truth.
and that is the truth.
So how do you like that? If one person put it out, that would be I don't know, it's overproduced anyway, but 2 people the same time doing it, that's just embarrassing. I mean, that just shows that they're not really that they're not really that serious about it. They don't really care about it. They don't have anything to say uniquely to them. They're just reading off a script. So if you ever think that you're actually just in a play and they're just doing what they want to, that's basically it. They're just actors. But then we see this.
They bring prices down starting on day one.
I'm not going to go through the whole thing again, but it's basically 22
Yeah, 22
people
of them.
did the same script with the same content, with the same backing. As you're a Democrat, what are you thinking of this? What is your thought process? If a Republican did this, I would think it was stupid. I can't speak for what the Democrats think about this, if they think it's powerful and hard hitting, but to me, it's insane that they would do this and allow this to happen. They're even holding the same recorder like the same way. It's like somebody went to every one of them, said, say this, and they just did, like seals. It's crazy.
Well, that's what I was kind of thinking. I was thinking I'd love to be a Democrat politician because I don't have to think.
Yeah.
I just show up. I sit on my hands. There's a speech. I don't have to listen. I can plan my phone for an hour and a half because I'm not going to stand up no matter what he says.
Right.
Right. Even come back to Minnesota. Oh, well, we got 66 of them that are not going to show up for work, even though they were just elected, even first-term politicians. We're just not going to show up for work. Fall in line. Fall in line, as that's the Democrats' motto. You fall in line. Or
Pretty much.
We're not going to, or the Democrats won't give you money, won't endorse you. And that's all they're, so as a Democrat, it'd be an easy job because you don't have to think for yourself.
And if you think this is just happening here, here's a little tweet sent out by people after the Zelensky Trump thing. It's the same freaking words.
Yep.
It's how much of this scripting is happening. And what I'm really interested to find out is what happens when USAID money actually dries up. Now, there's probably millions of dollars still sitting out there that people have accumulated, but sooner or later, that's going to go away. Have you noticed no protests have been happening? If there are protests, 20 people. It's not happening anymore. Well, who's paying for this? Who's coordinating that? That is the biggest question I have. I've been questioning it for years. We've been talking about it for years. Who sets up these protests? Who coordinates it? Who's supplying the bricks on the street?
Yeah, who's writing these paragraphs that everyone is forced to read?
Right.
Somewhere there's an actual Democrat Party that's organizing this. Be nice to know who it is.
Right.
And then their little sheep are just kind of following along and, go downtown to the Minnesota Power Corner on Lake and Superior and protest something. We don't know until we get there, but, we got to protest something.
Yeah, right.
Orange men bad.
Somebody's got to pay me for something here.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to change gears here just a little bit so we can kind of finish up. I want to say that a Washington senator said the following about kids. He said, kids over 13 have the complete right to make their own decisions about their mental health care. Parents don't have a right to have notice. They don't have a right to have consent about that. So he was specifically talking about, I believe, in a school, these parents found out that the school was changing the gender of the student without them knowing about it. So when they were in school, they were a different gender, had a different name, everything. But the parents had absolutely no right to know about it. And this guy is saying it's something like, as soon as you start menstruating as a woman, you have complete control of yourself and your parents have no say. This guy is psychotic. I'll put a link to it here, but.
And why was it so important that they leave the kids on the parents' health care until 26 years of age?
That's true. Right.
So, if 13 is when they can decide for themselves, then 13 is the age they can't be on their parents' health care anymore.
Yeah, they had to get a job.
Yeah. I mean, they've, once again, they're flip-flopping on the same exact issue.
Right. All right.
And most of them can't even, barely tie their shoes by the time they're 16. We don't want them driving and much less deciding stuff like that.
Right. All right. I'm going to end it on this one here. This is another screen share. And this is, let's see what happens when I make this big. Okay. So I'm going to show you what happens when a boy plays against girls. Back injury after that. Couldn't get up. This is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
You've got boys competing with girls, breaking their records, and the girls that are coming in second or third, they never will get that chance back. There's one opportunity you have in high school, college, and other sports to get that record. Even if it's given to you later, it's not the same. They shouldn't be competing and feeling like this person beat me by 6 seconds, but I'm still good. look at me. They should be competing at people that are at the same level, the same.
Right.
We've talked about that for a long time. It's I thought people would get the message when they watched the Olympic boxing match last year, and that guy pummeled that girl, and the one just gave up. She just said, "I can't take this." But people still defend it. And I do not understand why. And the Democrats in this state defend it. They absolutely do. They just had that bill come up, and they were just voted against it. They will not allow it to get the men out of the women's sports. And soon enough, they're going to lose their federal funding because of it. And that's all right.
Well, that's what Bam Bondi is going to do. Is she's going to come in and make things right. If you don't follow federal law on kids in sports, then she's going to take away all the federal funding. So
right.
I've
never personally talked to somebody who thought it was a good idea, by the way. And I talked to a lot of people who are Democrats.
Yeah.
So I don't know who is actually supporting this. It's certainly not any of the Republicans and none of the Democrats I know. And it's only going to stop when the girls stop actually competing against these guys. And it just becomes a forfeit. Unfortunately, that just means that they are never going to have that opportunity again in their lives either.
Well, there's gonna be a line in the sand. Eventually, they're gonna cross that. They're gonna go too far. I thought it already crossed, but it hasn't yet. But they're gonna see that it's not fair, and then that will end it. Even the trans community will say, "Yeah, we better not do that anymore."
Seems like that boxing match was a perfect example. It's very likely somebody's going to get killed in one of those kind of matches, unfortunately, and it should never happen.
And even Trump had that one girl that got permanent brain injury from a volleyball spike from a trans person. So,
all right. Well, I think that's all I've got to say today. We can go on to health and fitness. Just to end it on a light note, how you been doing on your exercising, Dave?
I got 3 in. I started running again, 2.5 blocks, but my knees were starting to hurt, so we're gonna have to strengthen the legs up again. And
how were your lungs? Doing pretty good on that?
Well, yeah, it's about as good as it's going to. It's gonna take it's basically back to the beginning. So
sure. Well, I've been going out running almost every day. I think I've taken like 2 days off. I went out and did 23,000 steps on Saturday between running and just walking around. I'll tell you what, Sunday, beat tired. But I went for a run.
It's good.
It wasn't good. Sunday was not good.
No, but it's good to get outside, and even with the ash in the air, from wherever, even with the air
it's kind of
quality.
gone now. Thank God it's kind of gone, yeah.
But at least you're outside getting fresh air. That's the main thing. So
sunshine.
Yep.
All right. Well, anything else, Dave?
No, I don't. I was looking at my list of things, and we pretty much covered it. So it's an hour and a half. People are starting to drop off and fall asleep. So
then we've done our job.
Yeah.
All right. Well, until next week, we'll be here same time, 7:00 Thursday, and we'll do it all over again.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I'll end it here. Again, my name is Shawn.
And I'm Dave.
And if you like the channel, please subscribe. Please give us comments. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. Keep it civil or not. And we'll see you next time.